Hello Gears and Gaming fans, KDB here for Gears Intel, checking in with you once again. And yes, the time has finally arrived. Gears of War Reloaded is upon us. And I'm on hand today to provide you with my impressions of this shiny new version of the beloved classic. First things first, thank you to Coalition for providing an early access code. This has allowed me to spend plenty of time with the game since last week. And while I wouldn't call this a full review of the Reloaded package, mainly because the multiplayer was really difficult to explore in the early access period, it is instead just some of my usual ramblings on primarily how it feels and looks and all that stuff. So for those of you looking for top line thoughts, I am excited to say that right off the bat, I do feel a bit silly for being really soft on Reloaded when it was first announced, because the too long didn't read version of my impressions is, from what I've played so far, this probably is the best way to play one of the best video games ever made. Yeah, we're going to get into it. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe and give the video a like. We are a group of video game fans, Gears of War fans, who do various content on Gears of War and video game adjacent stuff. We have loads of previous podcast episodes to check out and available on podcast apps too. It's an awesome time to be a Gears fan with plenty to come moving forward, especially on Gears of War Reloaded as well. So as I say, let's get into it. Maybe you're a fan, you're an old fan of Gears of War, wondering if Reloaded is worth checking out. Maybe you've never played Gears of War before and you want to know if this acts as a good entry point for the series, which, with the release of Gears of War on PlayStation, I think that's probably the case for lots of people. It's an odd impressions video to do because, well, for a couple of reasons. Down the line here on Gears Intel, we have got in our plans to do a deep dive retrospective on the original game. And that will probably be on the 360 version, warts and all. And that's coming in the future. And with everything about the story, in Gears of War already out there, and this basically being a huge upgrade for what we already got in Ultimate Edition, there isn't really any surprises in store to discuss. So it's not the time or place to decide to sort of dissect the story and the narrative and talk about character arcs and the wider impact of Gears of War. Instead, I'm just going to really focus on what those key selling points of Reloaded are, and that is mainly how it looks and sounds and feels to play as part of a modern generation. For this franchise that's going multi-platform, these are the things that the game has been shouting about in its marketing, so does it deliver? For those of you that don't know, what does it say it's going to deliver? We've got a few things here, and I'm not going to go through everything because there's quite a bit, but we've got essentially some upgrades from Ultimate Edition and then a load of new features that they've added just for this version as well. So we're going from 1080p to 4K, 30 FPS for the campaign to 60 FPS, 60 FPS for multiplayer to 120 FPS, SDR to HDR, 7.1 audio to 7.1 3D spatial audio, 3D, eh? Very fancy. And then a bunch of new things they've added, variable refresh rate, 4K assets and remastered textures. Now that's a big one. Improved lighting quality, improved shadows and reflections, enhanced post-processing visual effects, super resolution and improved anti-aliasing, speed and immediacy, no loads throughout the campaign, and green power saving options if you're interested in that. Multiplayer enhancements, all 19 multiplayer maps are remastered, all the maps, modes, classic characters and cosmetics are included, there's no paid DLC, you can unlock everything through progression, fully replaced and modernized online backend, which is good. Dedicated multiplayer servers, PC anti-cheat. We have things like cross-play, cross-progression, cross-platform. So wherever you play, you can take your progress with you, which is really cool. PC also comes with its own unique offerings, such as uncapped frame rate and ultra-wide screen options, while the PS5 takes advantage of PS5 Pro and all the haptics for the controller and stuff like that. All of these bells and whistles have been added to this iconic game as it's sent multi-platform, so yeah, that's what these impressions are focused on. I obviously have an extensive history with the franchise, being a player from the very beginning. So I've been around the block with Gears to kind of give myself context to know how it's balancing that original game and Ultimate Edition with the modern era. A little disclaimer about my setup. at least in terms of capturing the gameplay. I do not make 4K YouTube videos, so what you're seeing on screen isn't fully representative of what I experienced on my TV while playing on the Series X. My capture card only does 1080p, for now anyway. 4K just seems like a massive hassle to deal with, and I'm not a full-time YouTuber, so I'm not there yet. But yeah, my TV is 4K and it can output 120 Hz, so I have been able to experience, you know, the new sheen that it offers for consoles, and I've been playing on the Series X, as I say. So while you're not seeing exactly what I see on my TV here, and that's not really possible on YouTube anyway, I think, because there's always compression. Even with those who are uploading at full 4K, there's going to be lots of compression, even with high bit rate. So anyway, the best way to experience it is in situ on your machine, wherever you're playing. But with all that out the way, how is it? So I mainly focused on the campaign because finding matches in multiplayer during this early access period was almost impossible, as I say, though I will get to multiplayer in a minute because I did play some. I can talk about what I've experienced so far, what I thought, but we will also be doing a follow-up podcast episode to talk more about the game and the multiplayer, so David and Alex can join me and get their thoughts to you too. But I've played the campaign almost twice through, and I've gone through and got all the collectibles, and I have to say that in this version, it really does look incredible. I think this is Ultimate Edition, but everything is just turned up to the max beyond a level of fidelity that version put out. Everything in the details and the textures is just richer and sharper, making it genuinely look like a game that could be released this generation. You know, these enhanced textures that they're talking about in all these updates, they're not lying. Everything is sharper and more detailed, and it's fantastic. And I think, you know, I'm someone that's played the game many, many times, Ultimate Edition and the original, and I'm here playing it again, kind of, you know, with a bit of cynicism as well, but everything was looking fantastic. And I think if you want to be objective about it, I think from a world building perspective, this level of detail, it does enable the game to make you feel more immersed in that environmental storytelling. The architecture, the pillars, the paintings, the posters, the brickwork, and of course the character models themselves. Nothing is blurry, nothing looks rough, everything just looks so crisp, and even stuff way off in the distance that has, you know, it just has texture that makes it feel like an area you could visit rather than a procedural video game backdrop of some kind or a flat matte painting. And some of this may very well be matte painting in the background, but it just looks so good. And even standing around and, you know, the flames engulfing the buildings, giving this like war-torn feeling for these locations and giving it a sense of widespread destruction that, you know, you can kind of pick up the sniper rifle and just zoom in and observe through the scope of the sniper rifle. It's yeah, you look at it all and you find yourself thinking about, or at least I find myself thinking about, what happened to the people who lived in these buildings and worked in these buildings, and everything is just so much more sharper than Ultimate Edition that I feel offering that level of detail just enhances the experience in so many ways. Not just being nice to look at, it enhances that environmental storytelling. And I'm a big fan of environmental storytelling. One of my favorite franchises is Resident Evil, and back in the day, you know, they had pre-rendered backgrounds that was full of environmental storytelling, and that's what they did to make those games sing. And yeah, I have some thoughts on maybe why this works so well for a game like Gears of War, which I'll kind of get to in my conclusion on this video, on these impressions. But yeah, playing it, it's just, everything is, yeah, so much more detail. It looks fantastic. And that detail and those textures, it's all accompanied by enhanced lighting effects, which is used across the game in different settings. So you've got day, you've got dusk, you've got night, you've got the nemesis-filled sky, you know, towards the end. You have inside buildings, you have outside buildings, all adding, you know, huge variation to what may often be looked back on the original game as a bit of a drab, one-note setting from those 360 days. And plenty of work has been done here that, while Ultimate Edition stepped up that atmosphere with better lighting, if you look at screenshots and clips side by side, Ultimate Edition looks so much flatter in comparison. It looks good, but it doesn't look as good as this. And Reloaded just, it steps it up again. And everything from just like the glow of the cog armor, that sort of calming glow, the blue glow, the lights on their armor, the CRT monitors, the lanterns of the stranded, you've got flaming vehicles, the lambent, obviously the lambent infected enemies, piercing sunlight through some buildings as well. It all looks glorious, and there's so many different scenarios where you experience the lighting effects, and I just think, yeah, I'm walking through knowing that this looks as good, if not better, than some games released this generation, and the work is very clear. And again, you can be cynical and say, well, it's just slightly sharper. It's a slightly sharper version of Ultimate Edition, and that's an undersell. It's way more than that, and I think those things working together, yeah, it does some magic for the game. And I think, we've got the new reflections as well. That lighting is evident because of those new reflections, and it's the kind of thing that may not be noticed by most people, and that could be a good thing because it's all about subtlety. And if you can have everything dynamically interacting with itself as you explore, it creates in your mind and in your eyes, as you're processing the image, this mood and tone, which, yeah, it all works together. And it's very signature to Gears, and it feels like this is what Gears wanted to be. It's what it always wanted to be, and it's more impressive than ever with this 2025 release. The reflections in the puddles, it sounds silly. It's a silly thing to, people kind of console war about this online all the time and stuff, but I'm talking within the context of this game and the step up in fidelity. Those reflections in the puddle did catch my eye every single time. And yeah, I found myself slowly wandering around through areas that I've been through so many times in the past, but I'm doing it again. And you think, oh, am I really going to play through this campaign again? Yes. I love the campaign anyway, but this was making me stop and take notice yet again. I'm just going through every nook and cranny, soaking up this new detail and taking a moment to soak up that atmosphere and just admire the work that's been done. The upscaled textures and this new lighting really do make everything look better than ever. And again, my words and the video you're seeing on screen right now, they're not going to do it justice. You have to experience it in situ, on your Xbox, on your PS5, or on your PC. It really does make a difference. And, I'm not crazy about when fans say, this isn't my Gears of War, or this is or isn't my Gears of War, because the franchise can mean a lot of different things to different people. But sincerely, this absolutely is my Gears of War, and I feel like playing this, I'm back where it all started, but just seeing it all through a new pair of glasses, as cheesy as that sounds. And visually, tonally, mood-wise, atmosphere, detail, I don't know what else you could ask for. Everything looks stunning, and if you've got the screen to display it, yeah, you're in for a treat. It really does look fantastic. I was taking a ton of screenshots, recording my own footage, which, as I say, I can't record at 4K, but taking clips on my Xbox in 4K and recording screenshots in 4K, and I'm sure I'm going to be plastering those over the Gears Intel Twitter account in various forms and stuff like that. So, what else visually? The cutscenes, they do still run at a pre-rendered 30 FPS, and I know that will annoy some people, but for me, it just doesn't matter. I mean, when it comes to cinematics, I'm perfectly fine with it. Gives it a movie look, the filmic look, which is perfectly acceptable for story-focused moments where you only act as this observer. And I'm someone that will quite happily play certain games on 30 FPS, which I know seems sacrilegious to some people, but I love that I can play Gears of War with 60 FPS and 120 FPS because it's a shooter, and it can be a fast-paced shooter. But I think of a game like Alan Wake 2, which came out last year or year before, this cinematic horror experience. I played that on fidelity mode on 30 FPS the whole way. I didn't need 60 FPS. I felt like I was being immersed in a movie. It was great. It that was right for that game. And the cutscenes here at 30 FPS, it just doesn't matter. They look great. The cutscenes look awesome. And gameplay-wise, so just quickly, obviously, they've not done a lot to the gameplay. I don't even think they've done anything to the gameplay. This is, it's classic Gears, and everything is, I believe, exactly as it was in Ultimate Edition, which is fine. And I suppose if I had gripes, or if I wanted to get picky, you could say this was maybe an opportunity to add maybe some quality of life improvements. But then at the same time, I do love that they haven't messed with it. I think there are a couple of things maybe they could have added to enhance the experience. I think one thing that does stick out is I do really miss not being able to vault over cover while running, and that catches me out all the time. So it's a small thing, it takes some of the urgency away and slows you down a little bit. And same with the melee, being able to swipe with a dagger, that mechanic from Gears 5. I'm a big fan of that, and I felt that was innovative for Gears and that being put into that game. But there's fewer enemies here, it's less vital in terms of getting you out of a pinch, but the one swipe melee, the sort of two-piece style, it does feel dated at this point. So maybe the addition of things like different grenades could have been fun, particularly flame grenades. I think that might have been nice for the gameplay experience. But to be honest, I am just being picky. As I said, it is good that they've kind of left it as this sacred thing because it does play perfectly well. I think all they added, if I'm not mistaken, was being able to mark enemies. Am I imagining that? Somebody can correct me in the comments. Was that added in Ultimate Edition? I don't think you could mark enemies in the original Gears of War 1. But sometimes some of this stuff blurs together for me. Anyway, yeah, it's good that they've kind of left it as it is. They haven't messed with it. But I do wonder if a little addition here and there would have made it feel even more dynamic without harming that core gameplay appeal of classic Gears. So yeah, I'm not really complaining. It looks stunning. It feels like the Gears I know and love. So what more do you want? Okay, what of the multiplayer? So this is where it stopped me from turning this into a full-blown, review, if you like, because it wasn't possible to experience the full breadth of the multiplayer during the early access period. I guess unless you were squadding up with multiple people all the time, which I was not able to do. I'm sure some people were, and that's awesome, and you can find a bit more multiplayer stuff from their videos. But for me, generally, for a start, all I could find was Team Deathmatch. There was a lot of match searching, and I couldn't, even finding Team Deathmatch was difficult, but I did find it for a few periods of time. I'm not sure how many hours of multiplayer I've done, maybe 3 or 4 hours of multiplayer, but it was all Team Deathmatch. Generally, I found myself stacked against Gears veterans. We've got hardcore players in the community, some of those awesome guys who I came across in multiplayer, sometimes playing against them, sometimes playing with them, but in a lot of cases, because you're playing against stacked teams of very good players, it just made it unplayable for me. I mean, okay, unplayable is not fair. Less fun, if you like. It was perfectly playable, and it does absolutely feel like they have tightened things up since the beta. And I know they've released some notes on this. They have made improvements. I've got them here somewhere. So things like, the Nasher weapon tuning, Nasher improvements, tighter spread, smarter damage, and full hit recognition. Active reload damage is now fixed as well. I'll put this screenshot in the video so you can have a look if you want to look at all of it. But yeah, initially I was playing the multiplayer and it felt like I was still missing shots. The more I played it, the more it was very obvious that no, there has been some tuning here. And if you go back and watch my beta impressions video, the big gripe that I had, and I know lots of people had, was that the shotgun was just not landing any shots and people were missing point blank range shots. That seems to have changed. I was getting some kills even on these very, very good players, and fair play to them for doing so well. As I've said many times on this channel, the multiplayer, the PvP is not my main bag these days, but I do find myself, I got really sucked into the beta, and I can't wait now that the official launch is here to dive in with David and Alex and more people once the player base is out there to dive into King of the Hill and the other modes, and we'll bring you more thoughts on that in future. But for those who've played Ultimate Edition, the setup is the same, the matches you can choose is the same, it's all there. I just need to play more multiplayer before I really get into that, but it feels like the Gears I love, and it definitely feels more polished than the beta, which is good. Now, the big selfish fan in me does have one other thing that I would have liked to have seen, and that is a horde mode. This is my, I don't want to make fun of the game. I don't want to criticize the game for being something that it's not, but I think if they added a horde mode to this would have made this a 10 out of 10 must pick up for every single fan out there. And I'm not mad that it didn't, but I just think as an introduction for new fans on PS5, the fact that Gears is going to them without Horde is a real shame. It would have made this reloaded package something very special and very hard to ignore. So I am interested to see how people react to the multiplayer on other platforms and people who've never played it, because there can be a steep learning curve, and if matchmaking's good, then maybe it'll be fine. But if there was a Horde mode, I mean, yeah, that co-op nature of Gears where it really sings, obviously the co-op campaign is good. Horde mode has become its own juggernaut, and it's a shame it's not here. Maybe it'll get added in future, who knows? Probably not, but anyway. Right, I'm going to start moving towards wrapping this up, but as a package, you know, I don't really have a final verdict, because as I mentioned, I need to spend more time with the multiplayer. But as for my current feelings on Reloaded, my current impressions, this really does feel exactly like what they promised. This is a mega souped up version of the classic we all know and love being brought to the current generation. And I'm generally not a fan of remasters. Having grown up in the 8-bit era, there is something sacred to me about how video games made such a powerful impact with, you know, with less power, with fewer pixels and polygons. And then I think once we hit the 360 and PS3 gen, this did become less relevant, because many of those games were so specifically pushing for hyper-real, you know, photoreal or hyper-real style. And you could start to see where better graphics and more power would benefit those games from that era. And you think about, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't held back by the Mega Drive, but Gears of War on the 360, it wanted to be this epic thing, and it was, and so much so that they even added power to the hardware, right, to make this 360 able to run it, specifically because of Gears of War. So as a remaster, it was always going to be welcome down the line. And I think that's why Ultimate Edition had always probably been the best way to experience it, because Gears of War and games like it from the time kind of demanded more power. They were really pushing the boundaries of fidelity and graphics, and they were awesome at the time. They really were. We hadn't seen anything like it, but it doesn't do them harm to add more. Sonic the Hedgehog doesn't need more graphics because of the style it is, because of the art direction. Gears of War, bringing new textures, new lighting and all that stuff, yeah, it does a lot for it. So despite not needing remasters, because I love retro games and all that stuff, here is a situation where it really works. And I think it's so good to see. With this release, Gears of War has now officially never been more accessible. So whether you are a returning fan who's been there since day one like myself, or if you're jumping on for the first time, I think there is going to be something special here for you. Gears of War has, these days, niche gameplay, but I think once you get it, it can be unlike anything else you experience out there. And the fact that it looks this good while doing that these days, at the price that it's at as well, and, you know, specifically being on Game Pass and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's very, very hard to be critical, because Gears of War is an important video game that in the past many have tried to emulate, but none have ever really captured that classic gameplay. And that classic gameplay is right here, fully intact, but running better than ever. Now, your mileage may vary with some of that more sticky gameplay of the mid-2000s 360 era. And, of course, depending on your screen and your setup, you know, what TV you've got, what monitor you've got for your PC, what PC you're running, the sheen in place that this game is offering may be very little to what wasn't already available to you with Ultimate Edition. But whether you click with it or not, speaking as a Gears of War fan, what I can say is that I wish that more of my favourite franchises received this same kind of care and attention, because the fact is, the core of what I fell in love with 20 years ago has not been messed with here. It's mostly been left alone because it didn't need changing, and instead it's just been upgraded again in a way that makes it richer. More texture, more detail, better lighting, etc. All that. If you got the screen and the machine for it, it is a huge leap up from Ultimate Edition. And my time with Reloaded so far has only reinforced my feelings for the original. It is one of the best video games ever made, and this probably is now the definitive way to experience that. So, as you can tell, I'm pretty buzzing on it. I think this is a fun, awesome thing to tide us over until E-Day, which, of course, has now been confirmed is coming in 2026. But release dates shift, who knows? I'm glad Reloaded exists. I'm sorry I ever doubted it, because it looks fantastic, plays great, and it looks like they've listened to feedback from the beta multiplayer. Really looking forward to diving in more to the multiplayer. Playing with some of you guys, talking with you all about it. Please let me know what you think. Let us know if you've got any questions as well. But as mentioned, we are going to be on hand with a podcast episode to talk more about Reloaded and what we think and how the multiplayer really is working, because I'm just desperate to get into more of those modes. And I know the guys, David and Alex, are keen to give their thoughts as well. So I am going to wrap it up there. It's a definite recommend from me. If you've got Game Pass, there's no excuse. It's right there. If you're on PS5, this is 50 quid, right? 40 quid, 50 quid. Money well spent in every sense of the word. Go and pick it up. Go and support Gears of War. It's never been a better time to be a fan with everything that's going on. And yeah, I look forward to checking with you all soon. As mentioned, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out all of our content, follow us on Twitter at Gears_Intel. We're also on Blue Sky and TikTok. Just search for us. Search for Gears Intel. You will find us. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. We'll be back again soon. Until next time, remember the fallen.